Hi, I'm Grace LaConte, and I'm a business management consultant based in Texas, but I work with clients all over the country and associates around the world. And my main reason for making this video today is to help explain a method that I use to identify sources of profit leakage. So if you have a business or you manage one or you're in any way involved in business, you know that profit is the ability to acquire customers, to create revenue, and then to, with expenses going out the door, to be able to retain something so that you're not spending more than what you make. That's the basic math behind it. It gets a lot more complicated if you're in finance, but basically money comes in, money goes out, and whatever's left over is something that you can use to expand your business, to build wealth, to have options, to reward the people who are shareholders in the business. There's so many options when you have enough cash flow to be able to retain some as profit. But a lot of times there are leaks within a business or an organization where money is just flowing out that you may not even be aware of. And that's something that really concerned me as I worked in various companies and in healthcare. I watched a lot of great opportunities to bring that money back in, but there was resistance or there were just reasons why the leadership team wasn't really able to wrap their hands around how to keep that money coming back into the organization. So my real passion is to help leaders identify those sources of leaks and then to fix them so that the money can actually stay within the company and be used to more appropriately help their customers and their employees and in general to create a more healthy environment and business for the long term. So let me share my screen here, and I want to explain what I call the dirty dozen. So the dirty dozen of profit leakage. So this is a lot of information in one place, and we're going to go through each of these 4 different areas. But basically, there are 4 segments that I believe are important to review in any business or any organization. And I start by looking at the direction that the business owner is taking the business. So charting the course with a strategic compass. So first we look at potential areas of leakage with the vision and goals that the owner has, the business vision and strategy, which oftentimes are not made very clear, and then the organizational structure. And a lot of times I work with owners who have an enormous amount of hands-on abilities, and they create their business from scratch. They work really hard over the years to create cash flow and sales, and they build it up, and then it gets to be so large that they employ people, and then it keeps getting larger and larger, and the structure may not be very efficient. So that's something that we look at, and if there are leaks within that, we can work on fixing them. The second area is teams and operations. So of course you want a team that's high performance, but you also want to look at the culture behind it. What kind of environment are you promoting as a leader? What kinds of people are you putting in the right place? And are the people in the right positions for what their strengths are? And then are the systems and processes streamlined, and are they documented appropriately? Because a lot of owners I work with have tremendous knowledge in their brains, but they aren't necessarily documenting that. And I like the saying that a business can only be sold and transferred if the knowledge within it can be transferred. So a business only has value if the value can be transferred to someone else. The third area is financial fitness. So how healthy is your business financially? Can you maximize that profit and cash flow? And we look at, first of all, are the products and services that you're offering generating the maximum amount of profitability? Is that even something that you review? Sales and marketing, if you don't have a niche, like a specific area that you're actually going after in the market and looking for what your customers value, that can be a source of leak. The expenses, nobody wants to have to cut their expenses, but sometimes we have to control the costs while also making sure that the value that you're providing customers and also providing to your team is very high. And then finally, what is the health of the business itself? Are you familiar with your financial statements? Do you look at those on a regular basis? Do you plan ahead for long-term stability, or is that something that you prefer to leave to a financial manager? It's really important for business owners to look at those data points every single week if they can. And then finally, customers and growth. So these are the last two parts of a profit leakage evaluation. Do you know how it feels for a customer to go through your sales process? Do you have a program to retain them? Because we know that it costs a lot of money to acquire new customers. So do you have a way to boost that loyalty? And it may not necessarily just be with coupons or discounts. I generally recommend adding more value instead of discounting and cutting costs for your customers to purchase from you. And then finally, innovation and growth. Do you have a process that you use to make sure that you're getting solutions and staying ahead of competition? So let's just go forward with, oops, the strategic compass. The first section is the owner's vision and goals. So we talked about if you're an owner and you really don't know what direction you're going, that can be a real problem. And if your own vision for the future doesn't align with what the company can do for you, then that difference can be very difficult, because you may actually be fragmenting your own goals and kind of working almost at cross purposes with what the business can do for you. So that's just something that we look at first. And then where's your business going? What is the ultimate strategy? And along with this, a very uncomfortable but necessary conversation is, what is your ultimate goal for handing the business off eventually? So I call this the handoff. And it's not a fun conversation, but it's one that every single business owner should have. What would happen if they got hit by a truck tomorrow? Who's going to take over? And what kind of seamless process is going to occur so that the business itself doesn't suffer, and whoever you're leaving the business to is not going to have a very difficult time figuring out what was in your brain. What was the owner thinking? They want to be able to move forward pretty seamlessly. So that's part of the vision and strategy, is how would you hand this off if you had to? And finally, the structure. I really like to map out the structure of a company, the organizational chart. And I have a resource that I use with my clients just to see how different departments connect to each other and what communication paths are used. There's so much missed opportunity with communication that's either done too directly, meaning too many people are communicating the exact same thing and there could be some differences between those paths, or there's too much distance and data is siloed. So if you have different access points for certain data and information within your company, and those are duplicated, but they're done in a different way, then someone looking up your billing information might contradict what the sales team promised to a customer, and that can create a lot of problems. So it's not just the way that people are divided into different departments, but it's also how the information flows throughout the business. Then we have teams and operations. So you definitely want a team that's working at the highest performance possible. So how in the world do you motivate people? Well, that's where company culture can be a really interesting opportunity. If you are trying to foster a certain kind of environment, but you tend to hire people that do not match the environment that you want, or you're picking the same kinds of people with a personality type that's great for going out for a beer, but not so great for getting work done that's very efficient and time conscious, then that's potentially going to create some problems with your company culture. And you also want to make sure that you're reviewing behavior and, of course, performance. If you have an HR department or you have some sort of process to review your employees' work, and that they can review themselves. And I also really recommend that employees review the business, review their own managers, because that can give a lot of great feedback. It's not very comfortable, but it's very, very helpful to know ahead of time what employees are seeing and feeling when they work in your business, because there could be improvements that you could be making, but you would never know unless you lose employees very suddenly or in a large number. And that can really cripple the business's ability to continue moving forward if you're losing key employees. So that goes also along with people. How are you managing your talent? Are people working in the right roles? Or do you have a path for them to move forward and progress in their careers? And even if you do, how effective is that? And then systems and processes, this is one of my favorite things to review because I've worked in data management in the past, and the efficiency that you can achieve in a business is really only possible if processes are documented. So it doesn't mean that you put it in a binder and set it on a shelf. It means that everyone knows how to accomplish things in the most efficient way possible, and that no matter who's in charge of that process, it gets done almost exactly the same way every time. So similar to the McDonald's concept, where if you go through the drive-through, you expect to get exactly what you ordered. You don't expect to get an extra burger, or that you're missing the fries, or that something else is wrong. You want to make sure that there's an absolutely efficient and very consistent outcome. So if you have Lean or Six Sigma processes, that's one way, but there's some other important steps that a lot of companies tend to just not think about when it comes to documenting their processes. Okay, then finally, the next one is financial fitness. We talked about this earlier, but are your products and services generating the highest amount of product profitability possible? I'm amazed at how many companies don't analyze their profit margins on specific products and services. So this means you might have a product that sells really well and is very popular, but the margins are so tight that it's almost not worth having that product in terms of the profit margin. It could almost be like a loss leader, if you hear in restaurant terms. Where in grocery stores, when they try to get customers in the door by having something that's so cheap, they're brought in, but then they want to purchase other things. It's so important to make sure that you have profit margin evaluations in order to find out if your costs are actually higher than what you are able to keep through the sale. Sales and marketing is also, it's not just whether you make sales and how often, it's also the process of identifying needs in the market and knowing exactly what your customers perceive as valuable from what they're getting from you. And this is an interesting, almost like role reversal that's not very difficult to do, but it does take some effort and an open mind to be willing to get into the mind of what your customers, especially your top customers, are thinking and what they want to see. It's quite possible that you're missing an opportunity to provide services or products on top of what you're already doing that could be of tremendous value, and you could actually be charging more, and it wouldn't even take that much more time or effort or materials. But because there hasn't been a conversation about that, it's a missed opportunity. So that could be the type of leakage that's quite simple to put together once you know the steps to have that conversation. And then expenses, of course, nobody wants to cut back. Sometimes cutting back actually can be more useful if you have certain lines of products or services that are just not serving your community, but they're costing money to have available, or if there are certain expenses that are really convenient or that benefit the high level of leadership, but really don't provide good outcomes for the rest of the company. Those really need to be reviewed every single year, if not more often. And then financial health, as I mentioned, a lot of time financial experts are the only ones who really dig into the numbers, but I think it's so important for every single owner to really know their numbers and to be very familiar with their balance sheet and their profit and loss statement, to the point where they could have very detailed discussions every month with their financial leaders and even financial advisors about those numbers. If you're the type of owner who isn't really comfortable with finances, that doesn't mean that you don't ever have a chance to learn more. And the more you become familiar with those numbers, especially the metrics that make the most difference for your company, the more prepared you'll be for whatever happens next. And then the last two, the things that drive loyalty and expansion, have to do with your customer experience. So you definitely want to make sure that what your customer is seeing and feeling throughout the course of working with your company is something that they will continue to want to have in the future, because it's just so expensive to acquire new customers, especially if you're losing your loyal customers to a competitor and you're not even sure why they're leaving. That's an unfortunate sign that something's really wrong with the way that your company is positioned in the market. So this kind of goes back again to the sales and marketing concept, but it's really more about how you provide that service so that customers would never really want to leave. And then finally, we cannot stay stagnant. The way that the world is going, we have to continue to push forward and add new technology and stay relevant in a world that's really changing quickly. So what is it that competitors are doing that you in your company could do better? How are you staying ahead of those changes that could potentially cripple your business? And that's the concept of staying ahead by anticipating innovations that could be useful and also knowing how to grow in a healthy way. I personally think that not all growth is good growth, and that sometimes growth is actually a negative thing. If you think about growing too quickly can actually be a detriment to a plant, or certain things that happen in our bodies if they grow too fast, or if there's things that are growing that shouldn't be growing, that can be really dangerous. So not all growth is good growth, but there is growth that is almost necessary in order to just stay in the game. And companies that aren't growing are technically shrinking now. You can't really expect to stay at the same level forever. So even if you're uncomfortable with fast growth or with this 10x thing, or if that scaling is not a concept that you want to do, you're happy with the general size of your company, that's totally fine. But there should definitely be still an anticipation of how to continue to stay on track to build the value of the business over time. Because positioning your business for eventual sale or handing it off, however that looks to you, the only way to do that effectively is to have some sort of trajectory where you're not going backwards. So that's where this process comes in. So I hope that was helpful to you. I call it the dirty dozen of profit leakage. And if you want to find out more, you can look at my website, LaConteConsulting.com. Again, I'm Grace LaConte, and I would love to hear from you. So be sure to reach out to me through my website and check out more videos here if you want to learn more. Thanks a lot.